The old Ford pickup rumbled down the deserted highway, its headlights cutting through the thick darkness like a knife. Miles had already passed since the last town, a collection of flickering lights and fading memories in the rearview mirror. John adjusted the radio, static crackling through the speakers, a lonely soundtrack to his journey. He was alone, or so he thought. The road ahead, shrouded in darkness, seemed to stretch endlessly before him. Trees pressed in on either side, their branches gnarled and twisted like grasping claws. He felt a shiver run down his spine, a primal fear of the unknown settling in the pit of his stomach. He wished he'd taken the interstate. A figure appeared in the distance, a flicker of white against the black backdrop of the night. As John drew closer, squinting through the windshield, he could make out the shape of a woman, her hand outstretched in the universal sign of a hitchhiker. She wore a long white dress that seemed to shimmer faintly in the darkness. John hesitated, a knot of unease tightening in his gut. Something about her seemed off, out of place in this desolate stretch of road. Still, a sense of duty, perhaps even morbid curiosity, compelled him to slow down. As he pulled up alongside her, the woman tilted her head, her face hidden in the shadows of a wide-brimmed hat. "Need a ride?" John asked, his voice barely a whisper in the stillness of the night. The woman nodded slowly, her silence amplifying the unease that gnawed at him. She moved with an unnatural grace, gliding towards the truck rather than walking. He watched her in the side mirror as she settled into the passenger seat, a chill seeping into the cab despite the warmth of the heater. "Thank you, kind sir," she finally spoke, her voice a low melodic murmur that seemed to wrap around him like a cold fog. He could barely make out her features in the dim light, but her eyes, two dark, fathomless pools, seemed to pierce through him. A strange disquiet settled over him as they continued down the road, the silence between them growing heavier with each passing mile. The radio, which had been sputtering with static, suddenly blared to life, a cacophony of noise that made John jump. He reached to turn it down, but the knob slipped in his grasp. The woman beside him remained unsettlingly still, her gaze fixed on the road ahead. Her silence was unnerving, her presence a suffocating weight in the confined space of the truck. "Strange," he muttered, more to himself than to her. She didn't respond, but a faint, chilling smile seemed to play at the corners of her lips. The hair on the back of his neck prickled. He felt a growing certainty that something was terribly wrong, a sense of dread that seeped into his bones like ice water. He just wanted to reach his destination, to escape the oppressive atmosphere that had settled upon the truck. Section 5. The Vanishing. Glancing at his passenger, John noticed something peculiar. The woman who had been sitting beside him just moments ago was gone. There was no movement, no struggle, no open door. 1 minute she was there, her presence a tangible weight. The next, she was gone, vanished into thin air. His heart pounded in his chest, a frantic rhythm against his ribs. Panic surged through him, a wave of adrenaline that left him lightheaded. He slammed on the brakes, the truck skidding to a halt on the deserted road. He threw open the door and stumbled out, searching the darkness for any sign of the woman. There was nothing but the rustling leaves and the distant cry of an owl. He was alone. Section 6. Fear's Grip. Questions swirled in his mind, each more unsettling than the last. Who was she? Where did she go? Was she even real? He felt a chill run down his spine, a cold dread that transcended the cool night air. He was stranded, alone, on a road that suddenly felt more menacing than he could have ever imagined. John climbed back into the truck, his hands trembling as he gripped the steering wheel. He had to get out of there, to find somewhere safe, somewhere with light and people. He started the engine, the roar a comforting sound in the otherwise deafening silence. As he put the truck in gear, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched, that something unseen lingered nearby. Section 7. The Search. He drove for what felt like hours, his eyes scanning the roadside, searching for any sign of life, any indication that he wasn't alone in this desolate stretch of wilderness. The silence was broken only by the hum of the engine and the occasional rustle of leaves in the wind. He had never felt so isolated, so utterly alone. Finally, he reached a small town, its lights a beacon of hope in the darkness. He pulled into the first gas station he saw, the fluorescent lights a jarring contrast to the pitch-black night he'd just escaped. He stumbled into the brightly lit store, his heart still pounding in his chest. He needed to tell someone, anyone, about what had happened. Section 8. Local Lore. The old man behind the counter listened to John's story, his face etched with a mixture of skepticism and something else. Something akin to recognition. He leaned in close, his voice a low murmur that was barely audible above the hum of the refrigerators. "You seen the woman in white," the old man said, his voice barely a whisper. John stared at him, a chill running down his spine. "Local legend," the old man continued. "They say she wanders this road looking for a ride, but she ain't right." John listened, captivated and terrified in equal measure, as the old man spun a tale of a heartbroken woman, a tragic accident, and a restless spirit forever bound to the road. Section 9. Unanswered Questions. John left the gas station, his mind racing. He couldn't dismiss the old man's story as mere superstition. He had seen her, felt her presence, experienced her unsettling disappearance. He glanced back at the road, now illuminated by the gas station's lights, and felt a shiver run down his spine. He continued his journey, but the encounter left an indelible mark on him. The woman in white, whether a figment of his imagination or a restless spirit, had shaken him to his core. He couldn't explain what had happened, but he knew deep down that he would never forget his night on that desolate stretch of road. Section 10. The Road Less Traveled. Years later, John still thought about that night, the memory vivid despite the passage of time. He avoided that road, choosing instead the longer, more populated routes. The experience had changed him, left him with a lingering sense of unease and a profound respect for the unknown. He often wondered about the woman in white, about the truth behind the local legend. Was she a restless spirit, searching for something she could never find? Or was she a manifestation of his own fear and isolation on that lonely stretch of road? He would never know for sure. And maybe, he realized, some mysteries are better left unsolved.